The Doctor Who final has just happened. There is a lot to talk about, particularly where this leaves us with our two main characters of the Doctor and Ruby, and the big implications of that final scene. Yes, there is a lot to talk about, but how did this episode actually do? It's been a short season of Doctor Who, there's just not as many episodes as there used to be, and I feel like that has had an effect on the quality of what we're watching, particularly as it's hard to get attached to these characters given we've only spent about 5 minutes with them. Obviously it's more than 5 minutes, but you get my point. It doesn't feel like we've spent enough time as we traditionally would with the original series of Doctor Who and such, like back in the David Tennant era and the Matt Smith era, and obviously before that in classic Doctor Who as well. There's of course a few things to talk about, the handling of Sutekh, the god of death, and a lot of Ruby Sunday's family issues and such. We're going to get all of this in this review, but as a quick warning, if you're watching this and you haven't seen the episode yet, spoiler warning, there is a lot to talk about here and you do not want it spoiled. I would heavily suggest, if you're not the biggest fan, go and watch the latest episode, then come back and tell us your thoughts. Okay, let's go. Greetings everyone, my name is Jack and welcome to Tardis Central. If you're new around here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot of thoughts to share with you on Doctor Who recently, and of course a lot of explainer topics as well. This video is mainly our opinions on the final episode, or mainly my opinions on the final episode, and of course we'll be making some more dedicated videos later on this week, explaining certain things like that ending of Mrs. Flood, which we will talk about in just a second. Of course, please do let us know your opinions down below in the comment section. This is the final episode of Doctor Who Season 1. The first return season, the first season with Sutekh as the 15th Doctor. There is a lot of things to be said. If you've got some thoughts, do share them us down below in the comment section. I can't wait to hear your opinions, and maybe we'll discuss some of them in a video. I think a follow-up review of the overall season could be really cool as well, particularly when we get into the nitty-gritty details. Make it so. Okay, I know we want to talk about the ending of the first season. Let's talk about Mrs. Flood. We get a few more details about her character in this episode, particularly when she is talking of Cherry's Sunday. This is just before they bite the bullet and disappear into dust, which, the dust definitely sort of reminds me of Avengers Endgame, or whichever one it is, whenever they turn to dust. I'm not the biggest Marvel fan, but you get the point. It does feel a little bit like that, but it is Sutekh's gift of death, and that is the dust that, the sort of harbingers and I guess agents of it, or angels of death, spread around by blowing out their hands and such. There you go, dust. It was interesting with what Mrs. Flood was saying to Cherry, particularly as she is obviously aware of Sutekh, but is also kind of saying she has such great plans for whatever she was going to do. It implies she is a god or a guardian of some sort. Now, flash forward to the very ending scene of this. She's on top of Ruby Sunday's roof. Weird, I know. This time, however, she's dressed in sort of a white coat with an umbrella and a suitcase, suggesting she's moving on. Now, it's possible she's perhaps a guardian, guarding over those around her, perhaps Ruby Sunday in this case, though she didn't really do a good enough job. Clearly, she is not as powerful as Sutekh because she got wiped out by his dust, but also she must be powerful in a way as she recognises who he is, or is at least aware of the concept of the one who waits and such. So that's a pretty interesting idea. I'm not quite sure what to make of Mrs. Flood. I don't think she's a Time Lord anymore. It is possible she could be the Rani, which I know is a Time Lady and Time Lord essentially, but I feel like she's something more than that. She's something more powerful. Perhaps another god, another member of the Pantheon of Discord. That could be a really cool concept. It is something we will explore in another in-depth video, so stay tuned for that one. I don't really have much else to say on the whole Mrs. Flood thing. It's still confusing. I was expecting we wouldn't get an answer in this one. It doesn't bother me too much. Mrs. Flood's handling in the final, and to be fair, the entire season, it doesn't bother me as much as I think it might bother other people. I think this is a nice mystery to follow through into the second season. If they kept us, say, following Ruby Sunday's heritage into season 2, that would be kind of annoying. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I look forward to exploring where this goes. It's nice to have like a small detail overarching into the next one, because she's not been a mainstay of it. Obviously, we introduced her in the Christmas special, Church on Ruby Road. That's where, Never Seen a TARDIS Before comes from. And then she's popped up once or twice in the season so far. It's not much to write home about, essentially. So it's not like she's been there every single episode, like the Susan Triad, aka Susan Twist. That's been a big mystery for the season. Okay, let's talk about Sutekh, the god of death, the god of all gods. Big dog. Well, basically, he was defeated by being thrown into the vortex, strapping a lead to his collar and dragging him into the time vortex. It was an interesting defeat. I did like the whole cinematic bits of him being flung through the vortex, and also the memes you like, guys, or you Doctor Who fans are currently making with Sutekh sort of like clinging to the TARDIS and going through the vortex. They are very funny. I was expecting more from a God of Death, I'm going to be honest. His sort of like presence in this episode felt very light. I was expecting a bit more of him, his grand plans, what he was going to do. Realistically, he was defeated because he was so obsessed with a doctor in the NHS, or a nurse in the NHS. Yeah, I do see the concept behind it, but he was so obsessed with something he couldn't see, that sort of blinded him to everything else and keeping the doctor alive. But realistically, he could have killed the doctor there and then, and just had Ruby Sunday tell him. You know, he can control it. He was literally immobilizing the doctor using his green dust again. So, yeah. There was a lot of plot holes there, I feel like. I do get what they were trying to do with Sutekh, but I feel like for the God of Death, I just expected a bit more. Maybe they should have made his One Who Waits an overarching thing into the second season, and maybe made like his Harbinger or another God Servant the villain of this final. That may have been a bit more interesting. I was not particularly a big fan of how they handled Sutekh. I expected more from the God of Death, I'm going to be honest. It felt a bit flat. Hopefully, I don't know, because we're probably not going to see him again. There's a lot of canon implications here. Implications with Sutekh apparently being there the whole time. So it seems implied that from the Pyramids of Mars, when he was first banished into the time vortex, or to the end of the thing where he apparently aged and died, it seems he clung to the Tardis instead. That implies he's been with the Doctor ever since, just clinging on to the Tardis. I kind of like it, but I kind of don't, because that makes a lot of other stories feel very weird. People have already been posting on social media, what about when the TARDIS gets shrunk, or, you know, things are going on inside it? I see some of your tweets. Is he aware of all of that? Has he been there the whole time? I guess he is the one who waits, but I kind of like the idea of Sutekh waiting out in the void and rounding up these other gods, essentially. I do believe some books in the Doctor universe told that tale. That makes more sense, I feel like. That is a more, like, not an easy solution, but a more solid solution to telling that story. So I wasn't quite a fan of how he was handled in this episode, and I do feel like it lets down the whole event. The Legend of Ruby Sunday introduced him really, really well. Empire of Death just dropped the ball, I think, and that was a bit of a shame. Naturally, Unit got offed in the first couple of seconds. We kind of saw that one coming, but also I knew they weren't going to be dead for long. You wouldn't kill off this massive room of characters just like that. You'd have something building up and leading a bit more to it. So I wasn't really sold on the bandwagon, but, you know, they were just going to die, and that was it. That was the end of Kate Stewart, Colonel Ibrahim, you know, Yasmin Phineas Rose and Morris Gibbons and such. That was the end. Also, it kind of doesn't help, but spoiler alert warning here for season 2. So if you're watching, pause for 30 seconds. I've seen set pictures with Kate Stewart and Colonel Ibrahim and Shirley on, so kind of knew they weren't going to bite the dust literally at any point. So yeah, that's just something to think about. I liked how Kate Stewart was handled. Wasn't quite sure about the sort of implied romantic interaction between her and Colonel Ibrahim at the end part. Not quite sure how that's going to be handled. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. Kate Stewart is a fantastic character. We are definitely going to get more of her in season 2. Whether we're ever going to get that Unit spin-off, I don't know. Okay, let's talk about Ruby's heritage for a second. This is the other big plot point of this episode, and arguably the main one here. The Legend of Ruby Sunday, Empire of Death, this entire season has been telling the story of Ruby Sunday. From a church on Ruby Road to here. Even Mrs. Flood, whoever she is, says at the end, this is the end of the church on Ruby Road story. In Doctor Unleashed, Russell T Davies has also said he's paused this storyline for now. Millie Gibson is back in the upcoming second season, but she will not be the main companion of the Doctor. Instead, Verada Sifu will be playing an unnamed companion of the Doctor, and we'll see their adventures running around and such. But Millie Gibson will come back as Ruby Sunday. There is a clip of her on our social media right now. If you want to see the first clip of season 2, follow Tardis Central, go take a look. But seriously, I don't know. I like what they were doing with the story, but I feel like they built up the idea of Ruby's mother, so hyped, such a big deal, evidently somebody we might know, over the course of the season, and then to just drop it as a random woman. I get what they were doing. Somebody can be important, but also it just feels a bit eh. Like, I think we were all expecting someone of significance, whether it be another god, somebody we know, Susan, for example. Yeah, speaking of Susan, by the way, they've been doing a hell of a good job at baiting classic fans by going, oh, Susan's this, and implying she may turn up when she didn't. I hope the second season actually deals with this, because they've name dropped us so much throughout this season, and gotten fans excited quite a bit, and then just not to do anything with it. Sure, it is funny in a way, but also kind of disappointing. It would be nice to see a reunite between the Doctor and Susan, his granddaughter. I'm hoping that maybe the Doctor learns from how Ruby Sunday's family's been held, or like helped, and maybe that's what will spur him to meet her in season 2, and maybe we'll go down that line. We don't know what's going on about yet. Hopefully it's, you know, something they do explore. we will need to wait to see. But back to Ruby Sunday's story. I think the ending was rather touching, her finally meeting her mother and then perhaps finding her father. That was really interesting. But it just felt a bit flat in a way. Why was her mother dressed like a Sith Lord walking towards the church? That bit's quite odd. Also, I'm pretty sure in Legend of Ruby Sunday, she's got some sort of flashing thing on her wrist. Not an Apple Watch, hopefully. That would be a bit weird. But, you know, it looks something there. And I will discuss this in another video soon. I think I'm definitely going to have a lot more thoughts on this episode. This is not the best final of Doctor Who by a long shot. But Legend of Ruby Sunday, perhaps one of the best part 1 of 2 of the finals. But yeah, this episode really dropped the ball on a number of aspects. I enjoyed it, like a Doctor Who episode, but I just wasn't blown away. I watched this in the cinema live last night, and I just felt a bit meh at the end of it. It is a good episode. It's a nice quality episode of Doctor Who. Does it work as a final? Maybe not. I do feel like there's a lot of elements of this that are sort of just shoehorned in there, and a lot of problems were just conveniently resolved. Yeah, it's a bit odd, so I'm not quite sure what else to make of it. Naturally, we've got season 2 to look forward to for Doctor Who. There is a lot more coming down the pipeline. Whether we will get a season 3 confirmed and commissioned is unknown as of yet. I'm hesitant at this point in time. Unfortunately, it would not surprise me if season 3 didn't happen, which is kind of disappointing to say. I want it to happen. It would be great. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't know. I feel like this season ending isn't going to sell people on the idea of Doctor Who a bit more. So that's the concerning aspect for me. Yeah, maybe we'll share some more thoughts about it at some point. We're definitely going to have a season 2 preview video here on the channel soon. So if you want to get hyped for what's coming up and have a bit of a spoiler tease of what the filming's been up to, certain plot lines and such, stay tuned as it's going to be rather fun. Okay everyone, I've been Jack here on Tardis Central. Thank you very much for watching. Do let us know what you thought of this episode down below in the comment section. Once again, we'll be doing some more dedicated videos here on the channel, and we discuss them in more detail and go from there. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with that. Of course, drop your comments down below. I really want to read your opinions on it because I'm still mixed myself, so your opinions will help me. And yeah, that's it from Tardis Central. Thank you very much for joining us on our weekly reviews of Doctor Who for this first season. Stay tuned for some explainer videos. We're going to be talking about Mrs. Flood, of course, the Rani once again, the Beast, Sutekh, the Pantheon of Discord. We've got all these topics on their way, including the Memory Tardis and many, many more things. Thank you for watching. We'll see you very soon. Goodbye.